I don't think you guys understand how big of a moment this is right now.
You are chomping at the bit for me to say this.
This is a huge moment. I mean, we should shake hands
look,
on it.
look,
Look
I
at the
didn't
Dynasty
have
community
to
coming
do this.
together right now. Okay,
Dude, I feel like every single year for like 6 years in a row, we've been saying this is the best quarterback ever played with.
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
This one.
We've got 5 players that you should sell before the NFL season starts in Dynasty football specifically. We got a whole great group of creators coming on today's show. We are starting with Dynasty Domain.
What up?
So
Hello.
we've collaborated on a couple of videos together. Obviously, we love each other's channels, and it's great to keep collabing. We'll start with, obviously, your cell. Let's talk about this.
That was the least you've talked about how much you love our channels.
Every video, I'm like, I love their channel.
Now I'm kind of ticked off, but I know you are chomping at the bit for me to say this because I already told you who I was going to say. So
this is big moment right now. I just want everyone in the Dynasty community to know this is a huge moment.
I'm definitely emotionally hedging my Colts bet here. That's absolutely what I'm doing here.
Let me just say, the only reason you're saying this is because of the one article that I told him about 5 minutes before we recorded this video, and then he changed it. So this is absolutely, there's about 20% training camp reaction in this.
You can make fun of me all you want, but I know you're going to come on this video, tell people to buy TJ Hawkinson, the same old story. But
this is a sales video.
Listen, I know, but you would still say it on a sales video
Buy
because it's
TJ
literally your
Hawkinson.
default setting. So, all right, I'm going Anthony Richardson. Sorry, are you on your show? But I'm going Anthony Richardson here as a sell. And honestly, look, for Anthony Richardson, the upside is what? 101 in Dynasty, right? I mean, because he is the most athletic quarterback prospect of all time. Everybody understands that. Everybody knows it. And people know that if he does hit from a Dynasty perspective, there's probably not going to be a better quarterback to own.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. The dude is going at the 1-2 turn. And I've been supportive of this price all offseason. I'm like, okay, I see it. He's coming back in a situation where he's with Shane Steichen on a pretty good offense. He can really, kind of suit the offense to fit Anthony Richardson's strengths. One of those strengths not being, accuracy and things like that. But that's kind of what worries me. I feel like, not based on what we've seen in the preseason, because honestly with Anthony Richardson, I still think there's a good chance he's going to hit.
Sure.
I also think he can also support top wide receivers, which that's been my number one gripe with, the sell the wide receiver stuff. With Anthony Richardson, it's a little bit different because you've got guys in that range from a quarterback standpoint in Dynasty.
Sure.
Guys like Jordan Love, guys like Kyler Murray, guys like Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is going almost a full round down. But even when you were looking at the community rankings here, you were talking about Anthony Richardson going over Joe Burrow right now.
Yep.
And that is to me, that's
that was not happening a few months ago.
I'm a Colts fan. And when they took A-Rich, I screamed in our studio, and I was like let's go. I'm looking at that price, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? It's seriously, I mean, Joe Burrow, you're talking about a guy that not only has a contract, but is a way safer option and is much more value insulated. And it's kind of the same thing with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is, he has all the rushing upside, but he also has the contract, right? And he's also proven, Kyler Murray, that he can be a pretty good passer as well. Jordan Love just got paid, right? Trevor Lawrence just got paid. And look, contract insulation isn't everything, and I totally understand that. Justin Herbert even, I'll bring Justin Herbert up. Justin Herbert, I feel like, is a guy that's a really good value right now in Dynasty, and he's going to go up in value. So there are just, it's less about Anthony Richardson, and I'm like, okay, Anthony Richardson's inaccurate, and I saw the training camp clips against the Bengals, and so I'm going to panic sell. Because I'm not even it's not even, he's not worth his price. I think it's being baked into, his price, his upside, right?
Yeah.
I just think that there are players around him that you can pivot to, other quarterbacks that are more value insulated that, yes, they don't have as much upside. You can get them and pair them with another rushing quarterback if you really want to go the upside route in Dynasty Fantasy Football, which a lot of times we would recommend, especially in 12-team leagues. But there's pivot options there that I really like. And so, again, I'm not saying, Anthony Richardson sucks, Colts suck.
Sure.
But I'm saying I like some of these other guys in this range. So
I don't think you guys understand how big of a moment this is right now that we have Dynasty Domain talking about selling a Colts player. This is huge. We said this is the Berlin Wall coming down between our two channels.
It really is. And honestly, again, my main gripe has always been the receivers. The receivers are kind of where I'm like, I'm not selling the receivers.
Well,
but with Anthony Richardson,
you can see why we were a little concerned. It's too early. The season hasn't started, but
and I
being
think
able to support a receiver.
I think you made a good point with just the upside versus the safety at the quarterback position right now, because I think we're seeing more than we ever have in the history of the NFL, a bunch of top dollar quarterbacks getting paid. And we're getting to a point where the contract insulation is meaning less and less because you got 16 guys that are under contract for the next 4 or 5 years. So you do want to start looking at upside in that range. So that's why Anthony Richardson, in theory, could be a good pick in that range. But like you said, Kyler Murray's there, and he does have the contract. He has one thing that AR doesn't have. He has proven production consistently with good passing volume as well and accurate passing. And what I would say is there are plenty of teams that we've seen that have like Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels as their top 2 QBs. And I'm like, you need to move off AR.
Hey,
or you need
what
to move
could
off
happen
of
is
Jaden
fun,
Daniels.
but the other side of that is not fun.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get very logistical here. I think if you're to tier down, it's probably a first, second swap in a player. For some of these names?
Probably, yeah. I mean, again, I like the pivot the most, but you know, you go ahead.
So who are some names? Obviously, we would do that for Burrow for sure if that's out there.
Absolutely,
I think you would just straight swap, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hate straight swaps, and I'd do that swap.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say if you wanted to get a first and send a second and a Rich, what are those names? Is it Daniels, Murray, Herbert? How far down are you going? Are you going Purdy, Tua, or how far down are you going?
That's going to be largely dependent on who your other quarterback is in a Superflex league, right?
Okay.
So if you've got Anthony Richardson and then you've got Kirk Cousins, I don't think you want to down tier as far as
Tua.
a Purdy, a Tua, something like that, because you're going to be a little bit more hesitant there, and you're going to have a little bit shakier QB value on your roster. But if you're a dual elite QB and you've got up top a Hurts, an Allen, a Mahomes, somebody like that, even Lamar Jackson, then if you have Lamar Jackson and Richardson, it's a perfect example of a situation where I'd be selling Anthony Richardson. Pivoting off of him. But it's going to be dependent on who your other quarterback is. And so if you've got that other elite cornerstone quarterback on your roster, then down tier, not only to the Purdy, 2-0 range, I would maybe even say go as far down as,
Dak, May?
Dak, May. I mean, May, is different, Is he going to be a contending asset? Knicks.
You can get more in that tier down. A lot more.
Yeah, a lot
so
more.
It'll make sense.
And on elite value teams, a lot of time you want to see that. You go for upside at different positions depending on your league settings, things like that. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely think it's roster dependent.
Yeah.
If this is more of I feel like this should be most sells in Dynasty. You shouldn't really frame your sells on like who you're getting off your roster, but like, I don't like this guy, I don't like his talent, I don't like his situation, so I'm going to sell him. It should always be like, I'm going to look at the price, like this seems like a better value. So that's kind of why I'm doing it.
Well, this is a huge moment. I did not expect this moment to happen. I mean, we should shake hands
on
it.
Look at the
Dynasty community coming together right now, okay?
Dude, this is Reagan and Gorbachev right here. Like,
there you go.
All right. Tear down that wall.
I call Reagan. I'll just say it.
All right, so wow, what a start! This is going to be tough to follow. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna follow it up with
Nathan is selling Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, by the way. So here we go.
Now that's where you get crazy.
If you can throw in Josh Downs and AD Mitchell too to like upgrade from those players, right?
Okay, so who's your sell?
Yeah, I'm going with a guy that's kind of easier to talk about, I think, but it's worth discussing because I think for the last 3 years people have been saying sell Mike Evans, sell Mike Evans, sell Mike Evans, and what does he do? He puts up 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, and he ends up outproducing expectations. He generally maintains his value. Now he's 30, 31. I'm not really even worried about the age that much because he did sign a contract extension this year. He's going to be in Tampa for the rest of his career. And what's he going to do this year from a production perspective? He's probably going to put up 1,000 yards. Now, all that to say, I am terrified of an offense in Tampa Bay without Dave Canales. You saw the drop-off in quarterback production, quarterback play in Geno Smith in Seattle when Canales left that offense. And then you saw a huge uptick in production and just quarterback play with Baker Mayfield when Canales goes to Tampa Bay. And now he's leaving. He's the head coach for the Carolina Panthers. Baker Mayfield it feels like he's on his own. And even though he gets this contract extension, even though he's locked in for the next 2 years, he still is. He's a bridge quarterback. He really, really is. Even though everyone's going to say, well, he's getting paid $35 million a year.
Don't tell Corey.
That's 60% of what the best quarterbacks in the league are getting paid, which means he is a middle of the pack QB or low end quarterback. Like that's the money that QBs are getting paid now, starting QBs. So to me, I am just really, really worried about what that offense is going to look like as a whole. They may have to be more run heavy. I like Rachaad White's outlook in that offense. We like Chris Godwin and what he offers there. I mean, Chris Godwin had the same number of targets last year as Mike Evans and was like way less productive, and it was because of the touchdowns.
Hey, I like McMillan too.
Well, yes,
I mean, I think they've got a competent wide receiver 3 now. I think a guy with a lot of upside, in my opinion.
These guys know. I am the McMillan dude on Dynasty, so we're gonna have them on a little bit more here.
I question Baker Mayfield's ability to consistently and accurately push the ball downfield like he was able to with Canales. That's my biggest concern, and that was how Mike Evans was able to get so many touchdowns last year. And you've seen historically, Evans is going to get his own yardage wise all the time. He's going to get 1,000 yards. It's just, is he going to finish as a wide receiver 1 or a low end wide receiver 2? And I'm estimating that that's probably what he's going to end up being this year, as a low end wide receiver 2.
So just to add on to that conversation, doing some research myself on that Bucs wide receiver room. I don't know if you guys know this. So confusing to me. Do you guys know how they deployed Godwin last year, like alignment wise?
I mean, he was like hardly in the slot at all compared to how
so
much
strange. So like his
no
career, is before last year was around 70% in the slot. Mm-hmm. Last year, I think he played out wide 65% of the time.
He was like 30% slot percentage last year.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
So they're putting him back too, and that matters, and that's something that kind of Nathan kind of touched on. But Godwin and his increase in production this year, could potentially take away again with Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to do what Mike Evans always does.
Yes.
And every year you see Mike Evans kind of do the same thing. And what almost always fluctuates his touchdowns, right?
Yep.
And last year he scored a particularly high amount of touchdowns, and so expecting a little bit of regression in that area, I don't think is bold. And when you see that, and you add on, that Mike Evans is getting now into close to the scary 30 age, and people are really, really scared of that in Dynasty, then you naturally you're going to have the community at least be a little bit lower on him, whether it's warranted or not. It's probably a good move just because you're going to see the community lower their value on him, and if you do hold him and he doesn't return like from a production standpoint on his value, then you're kind of stuck there. So
I think you guys make some great points. I didn't really think through the Dave Canales change and what that would do for Mike Evans. I think we just assume Mike Evans is Mike Evans. So that's a good point. Let's talk logistically. So, me thinking about trying to trade a veteran receiver, I think we would all say the ideal goal is somehow to end up with the first round pick. I don't know that that's really possible, but let's say, would you guys, if you're a competing team, I assume that's why you have Mike Evans. If you want to get off him early, would you send your second and Mike Evans for someone else's first, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a route to do it. The other one is if you're just going to go straight up, you're probably getting a second rounder, but you got to determine if you're.
That one's tougher. I think if you're contending, I'm not taking a second for him. If you're rebuilding and you're trying to ship him off, I think you're getting more for him in season anyways, so I'm not really worried about trying to take a second.
Sure. There are some guys that are right above him too, value-wise, that we think are undervalued that are younger. You're just setting back the clock a few years.
Yeah.
Like even Deebo Samuel has a few years on Mike Evans.
Yes.
If you're a competitor and you want to just set back the clock a little bit and get a couple more years of consistent production, you would assume an upside with Deebo Samuel. I'd go for that. I mean, Rashee Rice is still criminally undervalued. You don't have to pay that much on top of Mike Evans to go get Rashee Rice, I promise you. And that to me is insane.
Just tell me that Rashee Rice gets suspended this year, and then they'll give you a discount.
Right.
I think some other names you can add there if you're trying to get younger. JSN's not out of the range there. Vlad McConkey, Jaden Reed's a great one. Keon Coleman. Christian Watson. So, time comes for all man. And at some point, Mike Evans won't put up 1,000 yards. I'm not telling you it's this year, but at some point he
wouldn't even bet on it being this year.
Him and Derrick Henry are both bionic men. So, maybe they just – maybe in 2025 we're talking about selling Mike Evans.
Well, it's 2030. We're back here doing this. Mike Evans is 47 years old. And we're like, I think this might be the year he's not going to go for 1,000. But
we're 80 years old. Mike Evans is in the grave, and he's still producing.
Yeah, and Mason's still using code FLOCK on Underdog.
Oh, my gosh. Well, we appreciate having you guys on. You guys are great. And let's go to Fantasy Stock Exchange. Hey, if you want your team reviewed by Badaki and myself on a live stream, very simple way to get that done is by becoming a yearly Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND on the Flock Fantasy website. That is one option. The other option is, regardless of what promo code you use at sign up, you can still get us to review your team. Go to the store. There's a link down below in the pinned comment, and you can still get us to review your team. We got some trade ideas that we can give you some direction for your team moving forward. You also get access to the entire website, all the premium tools, articles, databases, websites, draft guides. We appreciate you. Let's get back to the video. All right, so we've got some more sells here, but with Fantasy Stock Exchange, obviously Danny and Corey here. Danny, let's start with you. A guy you want to sell in Dynasty before the NFL season starts. Who is that?
Yeah, my sell is actually Stephon Diggs, wide receiver now of the Houston Texans. Obviously, big-time move this offseason.
Yep.
Gets traded from Buffalo to Houston. And I understand the name Stephon Diggs. He's been a staple in fantasy football.
Yep.
The number one wide receiver for Josh Allen a bunch of years. And now he's going to an offense in Houston that we project very well. I understand the pros for those that like Stephon Diggs. But for me personally, from both a production and a value installation standpoint, he's a very volatile asset. Now, in terms of the production, we did see a steep decline in the second half of last season. A guy that in the first half of the season was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy, dominant target shares, catching the football from Josh Allen. Last half of the season, he was a guy that averaged less than 1.5 yards per route run, despite having a 25% target share, wasn't even a top 30 wide receiver in points per game. Now gets traded this offseason. Again, it's less about Stephon Diggs. Well, there's obviously, of course, substance with Stephon Diggs because he, as a separator himself, went from a guy that, in Matt Harmon's reception perception in 2022, graded 90th percentile across the board. Whereas in 2023, we did see a steep decline going from, again, 90th across the board to a guy that was in the 60s and 70s. Okay. Now, with his projection this year, the thing that I am concerned about is that the redraft market kind of views Stephon Diggs as potentially even the number 1 on this team. Sure. I think it's a lot more likely he is the number 3 than he is the number 1. Okay. I like Tank Dell, but it's more so a Nico Collins pro take in the sense that I think Nico Collins is on a superstar trajectory. Everybody knows what he's able to do as a ball winner, 6'4", 215 pounds. I also think as a separator, Nico Collins has the opportunity to become a top 5 wide receiver, which will limit the overall ceiling Stephon Diggs has. And like I mentioned, from a value insulation standpoint, I don't think many realize that after this year, it's more than likely Stephon Diggs will not be on the Houston Texans.
That's what I wanted to talk about, actually, because that's really what we should think about. You're right. I mean,
100%.
How does his value ever increase from here? Right. So that's the question we should be asking. At the moment, we got Stephon Diggs, who is the wide receiver 43 on KTC. He's going to be 31 in season. If there is even, let's say, a 20% drop-off in production,
you're talking Tyler Lockett territory,
yes,
probably.
Right.
And that Brandon Cooks, there's been really good receivers in the past. Obviously, of course, Lockett and Cooks haven't had the ceiling that we've seen from Stephon Diggs in the past, but we see how the market behaves when a very good veteran wide receiver shows any type of decline. And I do think Stephon Diggs has already shown the signs of him declining. And now this year, if he is not a top 20 wide receiver in a redraft and he's not part of the Houston Texans next year, what's his value going to be at? Can you even get a second for him next year?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. And just quickly, Twitter version here. Tell me something. What do you want to get in return when you're selling him?
I personally would be fine with any type of second-round draft capital, but I think you can even get more, possibly even an early to mid-second-round pick, depending on how redraft-centric your Dynasty League is.
So let's throw just a couple. I'm going to throw a couple names at you.
Yep.
And tell me yes or no that you would trade like in a lateral move.
Yep.
So Christian Watson.
If you are a young team, I don't mind that transition because I do think Watson's got a ton of upside.
Jalen Polk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Xavier Legette.
Yes.
Jameson Williams.
Debatable, but I mean, I see the upside in the offense. Again, if you're a younger team, if you're not a top contender, if you're a top contender, you can keep Diggs. But if you want to kind of retool your team to youth, I think Jameson Williams is a fine transition.
Okay, one last name, and this might be strange to bring up. Dontavion Wicks.
I would. I think he's going to be a stud.
We call him the Baba Yaga here, the Don. Okay, cool. So Stephon Diggs, I like to take it. Makes a lot of sense. I don't see a scenario his value improves, so it makes a lot of sense. All right, Corey, who you got? Who's your sell before the season?
Yeah, I mean, with Diggs, he's very clearly like a veteran guy that you'd only hold if you were contending anyway. I think McLaurin, he's my sell. And I think the reason that he makes sense as a sell, because I think there's some teams that might be out there thinking, oh, if I'm a one-year retool, I can hold McLaurin. He's young enough. Yeah. He's drafted in 2019. Well, I mean, he's going to be 29 this year.
He's an old boy. Yep.
And not only that, but I feel like every single year for like 6 years in a row, we've been saying this is the best quarterback Terry McLaurin's ever played with.
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
This one definitely is. Don't get me wrong. This Jaden Daniels definitely the best quarterback that Terry McLaurin has ever played with. But Sam Howell was leading the league in passing yards when he was benched. Like by the time he was benched, he was leading the league in passing yards last year.
I know that all too well.
He was spreading the ball out. Terry McLaurin wasn't a clear alpha of this team, and even though he's still the best passing option they have, I don't think he's the type of receiver, ability-wise, that dictates he's going to be a 30% target share guy. There was his second season, we saw glimpses that he could become that dude. Sure. He hasn't really progressed since then. People draft Terry McLaurin thinking, I'm getting a bona fide wide receiver 1, but he's been a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 in fantasy his entire career. So I look at a guy who still has a lot of name value because of how good of a real-life receiver he is in the public eye, but I don't think you're getting any kind of meaningful production. If you're going for flex production, because that's kind of the territory you're at with Terry McLaurin, I feel like you're better going all in for a total veteran, like you guys talked about Amari Cooper and guys like that, or you're better off just kind of punting for a younger asset if that's the position your team is in.
Well, let's talk through that then. So I'm going to talk from the perspective of a rebuilder and a contender. I'm a rebuilder. What should I try and get for Terry? What's my ideal return?
I would sell him in a heartbeat for any second that projects mid or early. In a heartbeat, I would sell him for that.
And then I guess some of those names we talked about, just
Polk, Leggett, easily.
All of those names too.
Easily.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so you're a contender. What's some names that you would be looking to acquire?
So contending wise, it might be challenging to sell him one for
Tier
one.
up.
You want to tier
You'd
up.
want to tier up, yeah. Like if it costs you a little bit more to go, I know they just talked about Mike Evans, but I would rather have Mike Evans very easily because at least if you're in a position where you're contending, just give me the meaningful production, which I think Evans will give you at least meaningful wide receiver 2 or better production.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper, same thing. Again, if you're looking for a contending asset, I would rather pay like stuff on top of McLaurin to get up to Deebo Samuel. Again, if you're talking just lateral move, I'll take Calvin Ridley over Terry McLaurin.
Cooper
also.
Kupp.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Let me throw a hypothetical your way then. So you guys love Nico Collins, obviously. We know this. Would you pay Terry in a first
Easily.
for Nico?
Yes.
Easily.
Late first, sign me up.
Okay.
Nico's a top 15 receiver for me in Dynasty.
He's got a legitimate second round type of ceiling in the market.
Okay, like super flex.
Like in the range where like Garrett Wilson and those type of names go, I think he's got type of ceiling. I mean, if Olave was touching it, I think Nico Collins is straight up a better player.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Some very good ideas. Go out before the season starts. Make some of these moves. All right. So you heard from some of the brightest minds in the industry. Unfortunately, now you got to hear from my dumbass, and I'm going to tell you to sell Tajay Spears. Why? Because I simply cannot rationalize the difference in the Dynasty community rankings between Tajay and Tony Pollard. I can't wrap my head around it. Tajay is the RB18 on KTC. We've got Tony Pollard as the RB33. You don't like Tony Pollard. I don't like Tony Pollard. Your grandma, your dad, your uncle you never talk to anymore. Nobody likes Tony Pollard, okay? But these guys are probably going to split touches. They're going to split carries. They're probably going to split targets. You can make an argument that Tony Pollard is likely going to lead this team in rushing attempts. Why? Well, Tajay only saw 23% of the rushing market last year. Pollard has 20 pounds on Tajay, and he was PFF's highest graded rusher in the second half of the season after recovering from that injury. Neither move the needle for me, by the way. I don't think either are winning you a championship, and I like this Titans offense. I think it's going to be much better. So overall, I'm just looking to get off of Tajay Spears if I can. If he's RB18 right now, you're telling me I can get Ramondre? I think that might not be exciting for some people, but that is a player I'm more interested in. I think he has a more solidified role over the next couple of years. If I can use Tajay to tier up to the Jonathan Brooks range, the James Cook range, the Ken Walker range, if I can somehow turn Tajay into Josh Jacobs on a competing roster, if I'm trying to win right now and I can turn him into Derrick Henry, these are all some names that I'm looking to pivot with. So look, love Tajay Spears, super fun player to watch, but can't understand why the Dynasty community and the redraft community are on such different pages. Is it because of the age specifically, right? So it's something to ask yourself. But hey, we appreciate you guys watching the video. These have been really, really fun to make. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Hit the like button, subscribe. We'll see you very, very soon. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.